Hey guys, I'm in my mother's basement reviewing the grain structure on James Cameron's The Terminator. Let's talk about it. Hey you guys, welcome back to C Squad Cinema, a compendium for physical media, film reviews, rambles, and other nerdy movie talk. Well, it's been a minute since I've been able to post a video, and to the very few subscribers that I have right now, I apologize for that. As we came into December, we had a bit of a sickness come through our household. I have kids, and as we all know, they're like little petri dishes. They bring in everything with them from school. So I had that to deal with. And then just as we approach the holidays, there's been a lot to get ready for. And since I'm still figuring out this making videos thing, I'm trying to figure out what I do have time for, what I'm able to prioritize. And I figured I don't have very many subscribers yet, so nobody's probably missing these. And on that note, I do want to thank the 7 of you that I have who have joined my channel. I appreciate that. I know who at least one of you are, and I do really appreciate the few subscribers that I have. I did notice I have a lot more views per video than I actually have subscribers, so obviously that's something I want to change. Nobody starts a YouTube channel not wanting to gain momentum and get subscribers. In that regard, I will say, yes, I have hopes for 2025 to make this channel better, increase the subscriber count, talk about cinema with more of you. I started this channel because that's essentially it. I love to talk about cinema. I love recommending good films for people that haven't seen them. And that was really my only goal for this channel. I don't have aspirations to become YouTube famous or anything like that. I just want to have a good following of people that like to hear about cinema, like to hear about good physical media recommendations. So that's what I want to keep doing. So in that vein, if you have comments or suggestions for me on how I can improve this channel, please let me know down in the comments what you would like to see. I can tell you one thing, I know I need better audio. I knew that really from the beginning, but having family priorities, I just haven't been able to make that work in the budget. A little elf did tell me that Santa is bringing me a new microphone for Christmas. So hopefully what that means is in the new year, aside from better audio quality overall, I might branch out and start to do some weird stuff. One thing to know about me, I'm part of the ASMR community. I am someone that is very affected by ASMR. I work in law enforcement. It's a stressful job. So sometimes ASMR videos are what help me relax and be able to fall asleep after a long, crazy shift. So hopefully with that better microphone quality, I'll be able to start doing some ASMR reviews on certain films. If that's something that you are interested in, well, keep me posted on that. But I guess this is really the part where I say, hey, like and subscribe if you're joining me for the first time, or if you've seen some of my past few videos and you like what I had to offer, then hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and let's continue to talk cinema. So in this video, I thought I would just essentially play a little bit of catch up, because November, I sort of prioritized doing a Noir-vember series where I talked about some film noir titles that I really love. But there were some other big releases last month that were newer that I got and wanted to talk about it, but didn't get a chance to do that. So the first title, as you can see on the screen behind me there, it's The Terminator. Now, you saw in my intro, I made a little crack about being in my mother's basement reviewing the grain structure of this release. Obviously, that's a reference to James Cameron's comments about people that had criticisms of last year's releases of The Abyss, Aliens, and True Lies. Now, I'll say this right off the bat. I'm not a fan of James Cameron, the person. I think he comes off very much like an egotistical prick who is obsessed with his own ideas and genius. In interviews or special features on some of his films, he just comes across as this very egotistical know-it-all that almost talks down to people. I don't like how he comes across as an individual. And certainly his comments about people that had criticism for the look of his films on 4K last year, I think were inappropriate. It's a slap in the face to movie fans. And I get the whole idea that, hey, filmmakers can do what they want. It's their film, it's their piece of art. But art is meant to be looked at and displayed. And who are you making it for? Who are you displaying it to if your general attitude toward the people that are receiving that art are not really enjoying it? And all you have to say is that we're all a bunch of nerds in our mother's basement. And it pains me to say that about James Cameron, because obviously at the same time, I recognize that he has made some absolutely immortal contributions to the world of cinema. Many of his early works are some of my favorite films of all time, and for good reason. They're widely recognized as being just sci-fi masterpieces. Of course, Aliens is considered an iconic sequel to the original film. James Cameron very successfully expanded upon Ridley Scott's original sci-fi horror masterpiece by turning it into an action movie and upping the stakes a little bit and creating more reasons to care about what was going on in this universe. And for my money, The Abyss is hands down James Cameron's best sci-fi film. I think it actually has a really good screenplay, especially the extended edition, which gives the story a lot more room to breathe. And I think them all being deep in the ocean in this very pressurized, enclosed environment makes for a lot more tension than anything that happens in the Alien films. True Lies, to me, is the one that just doesn't hold up quite as well. Even though it was made in the 90s, it's aged kind of poorly. I think it's a mediocre action film at best. It's not even Arnold Schwarzenegger's best role. The look of the action sequence has not aged as well as they have in his other movies. Now, I firmly believe that James Cameron's last great film was Titanic. I think his passion for a big chunk of his life has been oceanic types of ideas and concepts, including the sinking of the Titanic. And I think he poured that passion into Titanic as a film. And the majesty of that is clearly there on the screen. I probably can't think of a film I saw more times in the theater than Titanic. I think Titanic's a wonderful motion picture, and certainly the last great thing that James Cameron did. So then, as we talk about his Avatar films, which I think are by a wide margin the worst things he's ever done, I think they are creatively bankrupt stories. I think the screenplays are ripoffs of other better story ideas that have already been put to film countless times. I think the writing is very lazy and cheesy, and you can tell the story was just an excuse to showcase this new technology that he thought was the greatest thing since, well, ever, considering that he's gone back now and tried to make every single film in his filmography try to look like the Avatar pictures. And I think that's a mistake. Now, there's a place for Avatar and its sequel. I think they're absolutely gorgeous looking on the 4K format. They're pristine. They look shiny. They are jaw-dropping to look at. The technology, to me, it's not a big deal anymore. It was a big deal in 2009, but then he waited a long time to show us a sequel, and by then everybody's just kind of like, eh. His most compelling features are the things he did back in the 80s and the mid 90s. Those are exceptional films. And am I grateful we got 4K releases? Absolutely, especially for The Abyss. I think out of the 3 releases last year, The Abyss was the most welcoming to the process that he utilized to restore those films. Those results did not translate well to Aliens or True Lies. Those films should look like films. They don't need to look like Avatar. Let Avatar look like Avatar. Let The Terminator and Aliens and The Abyss look like films that were shot on film and that can look really good in 4K when you do a scan of that negative. James Cameron, for whatever reason, likes everything to be shiny and new and plays around with the AI upscaling and all of that, which we've seen numerous results where the AI is doing some wonky things with picture quality, especially in background details when it comes to writing and signs and things like that. I just don't know why anybody thinks that that is a good idea, but I'm going to leave it alone and get into The Terminator. A lot of people really enjoyed this release. The 4K picture quality got a lot more positive reception overall than The Abyss and True Lies and Aliens did. I'm somewhere in the middle. I think out of the four, certainly this is the least egregious of the AI upscaling technology thing. There are some parts of this movie that look honestly really great in 4K, especially with the color grade and HDR and all of those things. But at the same time, a lot of it just looks manipulated and murky and smoothed over and messed with. But we can't really expect anything more from James Cameron at this point. He only wants to retouch these if they're going to look shiny and digitized and as close to Avatar as he can possibly get. I think he's wrong-headed in that endeavor. I don't think the look of Avatar is impressive enough to go back and make all of your films want to achieve that same look. But not going to get lost in that rant. So overall, the Terminator on 4K, it's very watchable. It's not as aggressively processed as the three films from last year, but we deserve and should have gotten a lot better than this. But fortunately, next up is North by Northwest, an absolutely great 4K release for the month of November. Of course, this is Alfred Hitchcock's very well-known spy thriller from 1959. And let me tell you, this is an absolutely phenomenal restoration. For a film that was released in 1959, it was shot in the VistaVision format for widescreen, which was higher resolution than just your standard 35 millimeter. But the results from a 4K scan of that are incredible. This is jaw-dropping, basically from start to finish. Even in the opening moments, the color saturation, the upgrade from the Blu-ray, which had kind of like this green tint to it, looks amazing. This is an example of film preservation done correctly. This looks great, and it will probably never look better than this, nor probably could it. Now, as far as the film itself, I will say, for me, North by Northwest is not near the top of Alfred Hitchcock's best works for me. I've always been really partial to his early stuff. Even the first American film that he made, Rebecca, to me is a much better viewing experience than some of his later works, and certainly Notorious is one of the great film noirs as well. North by Northwest is still a lot of fun. It's just by no means my favorite Hitchcock film. A lot of people probably do feel that way. It's either this or Psycho as far as Alfred Hitchcock's best works, and that's a very well-warranted opinion. It's a fantastic spy thriller. I think what doesn't work for me in North by Northwest is that really the plot hinges on this idea of mistaken identity, which has been done to death in film, and it can be done really well. But I think the way it's executed here, it just lacks credibility because you've got this really inept guy that believes Cary Grant's character is somebody else simply because a waiter calls out that somebody else's name, and then Cary Grant happens to coincidentally be summoning the waiter at the same moment. And so this guy who's supposed to be really good at his job thinks that Cary Grant is that other guy who doesn't even exist simply because of that weird coincidence. And then nobody believes him that he's not that guy throughout the rest of the film. So I think that's a little silly, but without that bit of silliness, you don't have the rest of the plot of the movie, which is really well done. It's a lot of fun as a spy thriller. Now, I think what North by Northwest executes perfectly is its pacing. The whole thing has this sense of urgency, and the editing is really fantastic. It gives you a sense of escalation throughout the movie so that each moment, as he doesn't know what's going on, neither do we. And I think the pace at which details unravel are just perfect. And the scale for a film of 1959, it just can't be beat. But I think it looks gorgeous on 4K. The VistaVision is honestly jaw-dropping. The pacing is great, and you could certainly have a worse time at the movies than North by Northwest. It's an absolute classic, and for good reason. And in keeping with the Warner Brothers theme of this video, next up we have The Wizard of Oz, the absolute classic from 1939. This is the 85th anniversary edition of the film released in 4K last month. And I pre-ordered this edition because there's a lot of really cool goodies in here that I actually want to show you. But before I get into all that, I really want to talk about Wicked for a second. I saw that in the theater and I was blown away. I think it's a really excellent musical. And unless you've been under a rock, you know that Glicked is the new theatrical experience after Barbenheimer last summer. Right now, people are either going to see Gladiator 2 or they're going to see Wicked, the film adaptation of the stage musical, which I have seen, but it's been probably 16 years since I've seen it. I saw it in Seattle. I thought it was really good. Now, as far as it being a prequel to The Wizard of Oz, I don't think of it in those terms. I think it's a very good spiritual companion to The Wizard of Oz, but I have some issues with some of the story elements of Wicked being considered canon to The Wizard of Oz. Because to me, when it comes to The Wizard of Oz, this is just a very good and evil story. And there's classic film elements that you can't mess with or change or redact or anything like that. But Wicked was really great. It expands the story of the musical very extensively because the stage production itself is about 2.5 hours. The film is just part one, so it covers just the events that take place from the start of the musical to the end of the first act. And it expands that portion of the story to 2 hours and 50 minutes, almost 3 hours essentially. But I think the story really actually benefits from that. I think there's longer stretches between each musical number for some of the character progression to be fleshed out a little bit. It develops the friendship between Elphaba and Glinda, I think, a lot better than the stage version does. And I'm sorry, I've got to say, I was very impressed by Ariana Grande as Glinda and Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba. They are better than whoever I saw in the stage production many years ago. It was not Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth, but the film takes the musical elements and like dials it up to 11. The sense of scale in Wicked is really incredible. I think it's a beautiful looking film. I know there were some complaints about the color saturation or something. There was nothing wrong with the print that I saw of it. I thought it was gorgeous. And quite frankly, there were some scenes where I got chills just hearing some of the music and the ability of these characters to really belt out these well-known tunes at this point. I just thought it was absolutely ripe for the cinema format. And it tells a really epic story in a really epic way. I think it's very well done. It was one of the best times I had in the theater all year. That brings us back to The Wizard of Oz. What can you really say about The Wizard of Oz at this point? This is timeless for a reason. You know, kids today, my own kids, enjoy this as much as I did when I was growing up. I remember whenever this was going to be on cable television for me as a little guy, that was like an event. You know, we got excited if The Wizard of Oz was going to be on. It's a timeless story. You know, for its time, 1939, what they were able to pull off to get The Wizard of Oz made is just really miraculous. And for it to hold up as well as it does is really a testament of the power of cinema as an art. Now, The Wizard of Oz was shot in Technicolor, and the restoration on the 4K, which has been out for a while, is exceptional. It is one of the most just beautiful color presentations of a film in my entire collection. It is very impressive. And if you need to showcase for somebody the power of 4K and the ability of HDR to really make a film come to life, look no further than The Wizard of Oz. This is an absolutely phenomenal 4K. Now, this 85th anniversary 4K edition comes with this really nice outer rigid slipcase. Got the spine there, and then this absolutely gorgeous artwork on the back. I love that. And then on the inside, you've got a steelbook with a really nice green and yellow color scheme and an image of the Wicked Witch melting there. And then on the back of this, You got the yellow brick road headed toward the Emerald City there in the distance. And then on the inside, which I have the 4K disc in the player behind me, but the Blu-ray and 4K have the same art, so they're both green with the silhouette of the witch there. And then you got that nice inner artwork as well. You know, it's amazing what they can pull off with steelbooks. For my money, these are just really well made. You know, and if you don't dent them, they actually hold on a shelf a lot better, even though they weigh a little more. But I really love that matte finish on a good steelbook, and some of the alternative artwork they do for steelbooks, I think, is second to none. So to me, steelbooks is the way to go, and I love that they included this one with the Wizard of Oz release. But that's not all. Also, you get this envelope on the inside, and in there, you kind of have some really cool replicas of some things. One of the things you get is a reproduction of the Grauman Chinese Theater showing of the Wizard of Oz. You also get this nice reproduction of a program here, which includes like the cast list, almost like you'd see for a stage play or something. And then just some really neat factoids that they actually printed in the program for the film in 1939. So that's really cool. You also get this lobby card. Then you get some reproductions of some of the original posters. And then even more. These awesome stills from the film, publicity stills, and there's a lot of them in this. There's a lot. Now, part of why I wanted to showcase this is there's a lot of value in this box set, especially for those of you that do not have The Wizard of Oz yet. Especially on 4K, it's an easy recommendation to buy it. Just full on, go buy The Wizard of Oz on 4K. Just do it. Whether it's this edition or not, you owe it to yourself to see this movie the way that it looks in 4K. It's a phenomenal buy. But this 85th anniversary edition, I think, has some real value. You know, there's reproductions there of some things that existed at the time of the film's release. So they're giving you some replicas of those items that they're a lot of fun to look at. It's just from a historical standpoint, that's really cool. But here's the kicker. I'm going to compare this release to something like the 30th anniversary edition of Pulp Fiction, which, full disclosure, I bought it, I got it, and I immediately sent it back with buyer's remorse. That was a travesty of a release because that was priced similarly to this Wizard of Oz 85th Anniversary Edition. You could get the Wizard of Oz 85th Anniversary Edition for around $60, and you see everything that comes with it. You get the nice rigid box, you get a steel book, you get all of this cool stuff inside. Whereas the 30th Anniversary Edition of Pulp Fiction, also an iconic film, came with this flimsy outer cardboard case, a slip cover on the actual disc itself with a pop-up of the dance sequence from the film, and then a few pieces of paper in there as well. And that is also $60. It was an absolutely ridiculous excuse for a 30th anniversary edition release. You're basically paying that price for a piece of cardboard and a few slips of paper that aren't even that great. While this is comparable as far as you're getting a lot of non-disc supplements with it, there's something to them. And at least you get a steelbook and a rigid slipcase. I would much rather put forward my money to a release like The Wizard of Oz for a film that is as timeless as that to this really lazy excuse for a release like they did with Pulp Fiction. I already have the Pulp Fiction 4K. They didn't do anything new with that release. I thought it was a travesty that they treated the film that way for its 30th anniversary. They could have done a lot better. So props to Warner Brothers for this version of The Wizard of Oz. Props to Warner Brothers for North by Northwest. Shame on James Cameron for the Terminator, but still an enjoyable film. So that's really it, you guys. I just wanted to play catch up with a few of the things that I did in November when I wasn't making the Noirvember videos. I got to see Wicked. I got all these releases, watched those. Now, for the holiday season, I got a pretty fun video coming your way, so stay tuned for that in the next few days. Go ahead and hit that bell notification so that you can be notified when it drops. Hit like, hit subscribe if you want more of my take on cinematic history. Keep it right here on C Squad Cinema, and we'll see you next time.